In the quiet fields of Bavaria, a family vanished overnight, leaving behind their home, their animals, and a trail of footprints leading to nowhere. What happened inside the Gruber farmhouse that cold March night still terrifies Germany and the world. It was March 31, 1922. The winter chill still clung to the small German village of Kaifeck, about 40 miles north of Munich. The Gruber family, Andreas, his wife Cecilia, their widowed daughter Victoria, her 2 young children, and their maid Maria, were living their quiet country life on a secluded farm known as Hinterkaifeck. But isolation has its price. For months, Andreas had been telling neighbors strange stories. He claimed to hear footsteps in the attic, tools disappearing from the shed, and even found strange footprints in the snow leading from the woods straight to his home, but none leading back. No one believed him. People in town called him paranoid, maybe even delusional. But just 6 days later, everyone in that house would be dead. When the mailman noticed the Grubers hadn't collected their post for several days, and neighbors saw smoke no longer rising from their chimney, a search party was formed. What they discovered inside the barn is still described as one of the most horrifying scenes in German history. Under a pile of hay and straw, they found the bodies of Andreas, his wife, Victoria, and her daughter Cecilia. All had been brutally murdered with a pickaxe. Nearby, in the farmhouse, lay the maid Maria and the youngest child, 2-year-old Joseph, both slain the same way. But what truly unsettled investigators wasn't just the brutality. It was what happened after. The killer, or killers, had stayed in the house for days. The animals were fed. Meals had been cooked. The fireplace still burned warm. Whoever had done this lived there, among the dead. Police arrived, but 1920s forensics were primitive. There were no fingerprints, no DNA, and no clear motive. Yet, the deeper they dug, the stranger the case became. Andreas Gruber was not a popular man. He was known for his temper and harshness. Some whispered that he had an abusive relationship with his daughter Victoria, even that Joseph, the youngest child, might not be her late husband's son, but her father's. Victoria's husband had died in the war, and she was one of the few in town who still had savings, which only fueled more gossip and resentment. When police questioned villagers, one man's name came up again and again. Lorenz Schlittenbauer, a neighbor and former lover of Victoria. He had once planned to marry her, but when the truth about her family's dark secrets came out, he backed away. Some even claimed he was Joseph's real father. And when he learned that Victoria wanted child support, he refused, saying the boy wasn't his. The day the bodies were discovered, Lorenz was among the first to enter the farm. He even moved the corpses to check their identities before police arrived. Witnesses said he seemed calm, too calm. When someone asked how he could walk into such a horrific scene without fear, he reportedly replied, "The killer won't hurt me." To this day, no one knows what he meant. But there were other eerie clues too. The family's maid, Maria, had only started working there the day before the murders. The previous maid had quit suddenly, claiming the house was haunted. She had heard voices and footsteps at night. Police later found her testimony chillingly similar to Andreas's reports about noises in the attic. Then came the attic itself. When officers climbed the ladder to check it, they found evidence that someone had been living up there. Straw bedding, food scraps, and a lantern. Whoever they were, they had been watching the family for weeks, maybe longer. Even more disturbing, all doors to the house were locked from the inside. There were no signs of forced entry. How did the killer escape? Or were they still hiding inside when the villagers first entered? As the investigation dragged on, more theories emerged. Some believed it was a vagrant or escaped prisoner who had taken refuge in the farmhouse and snapped. Others thought it was a robbery gone wrong. But nothing had been stolen, not money, not jewelry, not even food. Years later, investigators tried to reconstruct the murder scene. They discovered that the killer had likely lured each family member, one by one, into the barn, perhaps by imitating an animal's distress. Once inside, each was struck down with the same tool, a heavy mattock used for farm work. The mother and children were killed last. Kazilia, the eldest child, had clumps of her own hair in her hands. She had torn it out in terror. The brutality suggested rage, but also control. This was not a random attack. It was personal. The case consumed Germany. Hundreds of suspects were questioned, including thieves, soldiers, and even traveling salesmen. Decades later, the file still grows, with new theories appearing even in modern documentaries. DNA testing has never been possible. The murder weapon was lost during World War II, and most physical evidence decayed long ago. And yet, locals still whisper about Hinterkaifeck. The farmhouse was torn down in 1923, but visitors claim the land is cursed. Farmers report hearing footsteps in the grass at night, the sound of children crying, and lantern lights flickering in the fields where the barn once stood. In one of the most chilling discoveries, workers rebuilding the property decades later found a single rusted key, identical to the one the Grubers had lost just days before the murders. Some say it was the killer's key, the one used to enter the house unseen. Even today, the Hinterkaifeck murders remain one of Europe's darkest mysteries. No one was ever charged. Every suspect either died or was cleared by lack of evidence. And while new researchers have proposed everything from secret lovers to military deserters, one thing remains certain. The true killer knew the family intimately. Maybe it was someone who once sat at their table. Someone who knew their routines, their fears, their sins. Someone who didn't just take their lives but their peace. Almost a century later, people still visit the site to pay respects, or to feel the cold air that never seems to leave that ground. Locals say if you stand there at night, you can still hear the wind whispering through the grass, carrying faint echoes of the past. The creak of the barn door, the cry of a child, and footsteps in the attic. The case of Hinterkaifeck reminds us of a terrifying truth. That evil doesn't always come from strangers in the dark. Sometimes, it comes from those we think we know best.